My knees hit the frozen ground first, then my hands. The ice bit into my palms like 1,000 tiny needles. My nightgown was already soaked through, clinging to my 7-month pregnant belly as the snow swirled around me. I looked up at my house. My home. The brownstone I had purchased 3 years before I ever laid eyes on Curtis Thompson. The property that was in my name and my name alone. A fact my husband had no clue about. The door was still open, just barely. A sliver of golden light cutting through the darkness. I scrambled to my feet, my frozen legs screaming in protest. "Wait," I cried out, stumbling toward the porch. "Please, wait." But Monique was already there, the woman I had rescued from homelessness 2 months ago. The woman I had welcomed into my home out of the goodness of my heart. The woman I had just caught in bed with my husband. She stood in the doorway wearing my silk robe, the anniversary gift Curtis had given me last year, and she was smiling. She was actually smiling. "Monique!" I reached out, my hand stretching toward her. "Monique, please, it's freezing. I'm pregnant. Please, just let me." She shut the door in my face. The lock clicked. Loud. Final. "No!" I pressed myself against the door, pounding with both fists. "No, no, no, please, somebody help me." But the door stayed closed. I stumbled sideways, my bare feet slipping on the icy porch, and pressed myself against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the living room. Through the glass, I could see everything. My living room, my couch, my Christmas tree with the lights still twinkling. And Curtis. My husband was walking to the sofa. Calm as anything, like he hadn't just thrown his pregnant wife out into a snowstorm. Like he hadn't just been caught cheating. Like this was just another Tuesday night. I slammed my palm against the glass. "Curtis, Curtis, please." He turned his head. Our eyes met through the window. For one desperate second, I thought I saw something flicker in his expression. Guilt, shame. The man who had swept me off my feet with his charm and his compliments and his endless admiration. But then Monique appeared beside him. She draped herself across his body, running her fingers through his hair, whispering something in his ear. Curtis's face hardened. And then, God help me, I will never forget this moment as long as I live. He raised his hand and waved at me. He waved, like I was a stranger passing by, like I was nothing. Like I hadn't just caught him betraying everything we had built together. Monique reached for the remote on the coffee table. She pointed it at the window, still looking directly at me, and pressed a button. The automatic blinds began to descend. "No!" I screamed, pounding harder on the glass. "Curtis, don't do this, please. Think about what you're doing." But the blinds kept moving. Inch by inch, they erased the light. Erased my husband. Erased the woman who had pretended to be my friend. The last thing I saw before the blinds sealed shut was Monique's face. She blew me a kiss. And then there was nothing but darkness. Nothing but cold. Nothing but me. Alone in the snow. 7 months pregnant, on Christmas Eve. I sank to my knees on the frozen porch. The wind howled around me like a living thing, tearing at my thin nightgown. Biting into my skin. I couldn't feel my fingers anymore. Couldn't feel my toes. The cold was seeping into my bones, and all I could think was that I had to survive. I had to get help. I had to make it through this night. "I'm going to get us out of this," I whispered, wrapping my arms around my belly. "I promise, Mommy's going to get us out of this." But how did I get here? How did I end up freezing on my own front porch while my husband cuddled with another woman inside my own house? Let me tell you. Let me tell you everything. But first, I need you to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because this story has twists you will never see coming. And what I did to Curtis and Monique after I survived this night, they never saw it coming either. Now let me take you back to where it all started. My name is Denise Robinson. Well, it's Denise Robinson now. Back then, I was still Denise Thompson, Curtis's devoted wife. But here's what Curtis never knew about me. Here's what almost nobody knew. I was wealthy, not comfortable, not well off. Wealthy. My mom, Loretta Robinson, grew up poor on the east side of Detroit. She worked her way through nursing school, became a registered nurse, then a nurse practitioner, then started her own healthcare staffing agency at 42. By the time I was born, that agency was worth millions. But you would never know it by looking at us. Mom drove a Honda Accord until the wheels fell off. She lived in the same modest house she bought in 1985. She wore clothes from Target and carried a purse she got on sale at Macy's 5 years ago. Wealth whispers, Denise, she used to tell me. It doesn't scream. The moment you start flashing money around is the moment you attract the wrong kind of people. People who want what you have, not who you are. Live simple, invest smart, and never let a man know your full worth until you're absolutely certain he loves you for you. She taught me to invest quietly, to own property through LLCs with boring names, to live below my means and let my money work in the background, to watch how people treated me when they thought I had nothing, because that revealed their true character. I took her lessons to heart. By 28, I had my own real estate investment company. Nothing flashy, just a small office, a handful of employees, and a portfolio of properties across the Midwest that generated steady, reliable income. One of those properties was a brownstone in Oak Park, just outside Chicago. The brownstone I was currently freezing outside of. The one Curtis believed I was slowly paying off for a grateful client. I had lied to him about it, and that lie was about to become my greatest weapon. I met Curtis Thompson at a coffee shop on Michigan Avenue. It was a random Tuesday afternoon. I was working on my laptop, catching up on emails, when this tall, dark-skinned man appeared at my table with a smile that could light up a room. "Excuse me," he said, his voice smooth as honey. "I don't usually do this, but I've been sitting across the room for 20 minutes trying to work up the courage to come over here. You are the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." I looked up from my laptop, unimpressed. I had heard lines like this before. Men approached me all the time, usually focused on my body, my curves, my physical appearance. It got old fast. "Thank you," I said politely, "but I'm working." "I can see that." He didn't move. "But I'm willing to wait, or leave my number, or do whatever it takes to have a conversation with you, because I have a feeling you're not just beautiful on the outside." Something about his persistence made me pause. "What's your name?" I asked. Curtis Thompson. "And you are?" "Denise." "Denise." He said my name like it was precious. "Can I buy you another coffee, Denise? Just 15 minutes of your time. If I bore you, I'll leave and never bother you again." Against my better judgment, I agreed. That 15 minutes turned into 2 hours. Curtis was charming, funny, attentive. He asked about my work, my dreams, my life. He told me about his job at a commercial real estate firm, his ambitions to start his own company someday, his close relationship with his mother. By the time we left the coffee shop, I had given him my number. He called the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. Within 2 weeks, we were inseparable. Within 2 months, he proposed, and I said, yes. Now I know what you're thinking. 2 months? You married a man after 2 months? And you would be right to question that. But here's what you need to understand about Curtis. He was intoxicating. He made me feel like the center of the universe. Every conversation, every date, every moment together was filled with attention and admiration, and what felt like genuine love. He told me I was beautiful constantly. My smile, my eyes, my body, my curves. He couldn't stop touching me, couldn't stop looking at me, couldn't stop telling me how lucky he was. "You're perfect," he would say, running his hands over my hips. "Absolutely perfect. How did I get so lucky?" It felt like a fairy tale. But my mother wasn't enchanted. She came to visit 3 weeks after Curtis and I started dating, and her reaction to him was immediate and visceral. "I don't trust him," she said bluntly after Curtis left for the evening. "Something's off." "Mom, you just met him. Give him a chance." "I've seen enough." She fixed me with that look, the one that had guided me through every major decision of my life. "Denise, that man spent the entire dinner looking at your body. Every time you stood up, his eyes went straight to your behind. Every time you leaned forward, he was looking down your shirt. He finds me attractive. That's a problem? It's a problem when that's all he seems to find attractive." Mom shook her head slowly. "Baby, I didn't hear him ask you a single question about your thoughts, your goals, your dreams. Everything was surface. Everything was physical. That man is obsessed with your appearance, and that's not love. That's lust with a nice smile. You're being paranoid. I'm being protective. There's a difference." She took my hands in hers. I'm not saying don't date him. I'm saying slow down. Take your time. Get to know him. Watch how he acts when the newness wears off. Watch how he treats you when you're not at your best. And whatever you do, have the hard conversations before you commit. Talk about money. Talk about children. Talk about everything that matters. I will, Mom. And don't tell him about our money. Not yet. Not until you're absolutely sure he loves you for you. I promise. I kept that promise about the money. But I didn't slow down. When Curtis proposed after just 2 months of dating, I said yes. I got swept up in the romance, the passion, the fairy tale he was selling. We never had those hard conversations Mom warned me about. We never talked about children, not seriously, not specifically. Just vague mentions of someday and eventually. We never talked about finances beyond the surface level. We never talked about what we really wanted out of life. We built a marriage on attraction and chemistry and rushed excitement. And that was our first mistake. When Curtis asked about the brownstone, I told him a story. Not the truth. A story. It belongs to a former client, I said casually as we walked through the house for the first time together. An elderly woman named Mrs. Patterson. I helped her buy her dream retirement property in Florida a few years ago. She was so grateful for my work that she offered me this house at a steep discount. She just gave you a house? Curtis looked skeptical. Not gave. She's letting me pay it off slowly in weekly installments. No bank, no mortgage company, no interest. Just a private arrangement between us. She said she wanted to help a young woman get started, the way someone helped her when she was young. It was a plausible story. The kind of thing that happens sometimes in real estate. Curtis believed it without question. That's incredible, he said, looking around the brownstone with appreciation. You must have really impressed her. I try to take care of my clients. What I didn't tell him was that I had bought this house myself outright 3 years before we met. The money was already paid. The deed was in my name through an LLC. There were no weekly installments, no Mrs. Patterson, no private arrangement, just me and my property. But Curtis didn't know that, and I planned to keep it that way, for now. My plan was simple. I would watch Curtis carefully for the first 2 years of our marriage. I would see how he treated me when the honeymoon phase ended. I would see if he loved me, really loved me, or if my mother was right about him. His weekly contributions to the house payment would go into a separate savings account, untouched, waiting. And if he proved himself, if he showed me that his love was real, on our second anniversary, I would tell him everything. I would give him back every penny he had contributed plus interest. I would share the full truth about my family's wealth. I would invite him into my real life, with no more secrets. It was supposed to be a test, a protection, a gift waiting to be given. I never got to give it. The first year of marriage was confusing. On one hand, Curtis was attentive, romantic, affectionate. He brought me flowers every Friday. He planned elaborate date nights. He told me constantly how beautiful I was, how lucky he was, how perfect we were together. On the other hand, something always felt slightly off. His compliments were almost exclusively about my appearance, my body, my face, the way I looked in certain outfits. "You're so sexy," he would say, pulling me close. "God, look at you. You're like a work of art." It felt good to be desired, but sometimes I wanted him to desire my mind, my thoughts, my soul. When I tried to talk to him about work, his eyes would glaze over. When I shared my ideas about expanding my business, he would change the subject. When I asked his opinion on deeper topics, he would shrug and say, "I don't really follow that stuff. Let's talk about something fun." I told myself I was being too critical. Nobody was perfect. Curtis loved me in his way, and I should appreciate that. But my mother's words echoed in my head. Watch how he treats you when you're not at your best. I was about to find out. 1 year into our marriage, I got pregnant. It wasn't planned. Curtis and I had never really discussed children, not seriously. We had made vague references to someday and eventually, but we had never sat down and talked about whether we wanted kids, how many, when. Another conversation we should have had before getting married. Another red flag I ignored. When I saw the positive pregnancy test, I was terrified and thrilled in equal measure. A baby. Our baby. A little person who would be half me and half the man I loved. I spent the whole day planning how to tell Curtis. I bought a tiny onesie. I made his favorite dinner. I practiced my speech 100 times. When Curtis came home from work, I handed him the onesie with shaking hands. He looked at it, read the words, looked at me, and his face went completely blank. "You're pregnant?" His voice was flat. No excitement, no joy, nothing. "Yes. Isn't it wonderful? Did you do this on purpose?" The question hit me like a slap. "What? No, it just happened. These things happen sometimes." Curtis set the onesie down on the counter like it was contaminated. "We never talked about this, Denise. We never decided we were ready for kids." "I know, but did you even think about asking me first? About whether I wanted this?" "It's not something I planned. And once I found out, there was no decision to make for me. I want this baby, Curtis." He stared at me for a long moment. His jaw was tight. His eyes were cold. "I need some air," he said. And he walked out. He didn't come home until after midnight. And when he did, something fundamental had shifted between us. Something that would never shift back. The pregnancy changed everything. Not in the beautiful, glowing way the magazines promised. In an ugly, painful, isolating way. The physical changes hit me hard and fast. Morning sickness that lasted all day. Exhaustion that made it hard to get out of bed. Swelling in my feet and hands and face. Weight gain that transformed my body from the slim, curvy figure Curtis had fallen in love with into something rounder, softer, different. And Curtis could not handle it. He started sleeping in the guest room because my constant bathroom trips kept him awake. He stopped touching me because my belly got in the way. He made comments about my eating habits, my appearance, my letting myself go. One evening, I was in the bathroom dealing with a particularly bad bout of sickness. When I finally emerged, pale and shaking, Curtis was standing in the hallway. The expression on his face wasn't concern. It was disgust. Raw, undisguised disgust. "I'm sorry," I said weakly. "I can't control it." "It's revolting," he said flatly. "The sounds, the smells, all of it." He shook his head. "You used to be so... and now you're..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I understood perfectly. I used to be beautiful, desirable, the perfect trophy he could show off to his friends. Now I was pregnant, sick, swollen, human, and he couldn't stand it. Now, I need to pause here, because I know some of you are wondering why I didn't leave right then, why I didn't pack my bags and walk out on a man who clearly didn't love me for me. And the answer is complicated. When you're pregnant, you're vulnerable in ways you've never been before. Physically exhausted, emotionally fragile, dependent on routines and stability and the hope that things will get better. And I still believed things would get better. I told myself Curtis was just scared, just adjusting, just processing a change he hadn't expected. I told myself that once the baby came, everything would be different. He would see our child and fall in love. He would become the man I had believed him to be. I told myself a lot of lies to avoid facing the truth. The truth that my mother had been right all along. Curtis had never loved me. He had loved my body, my appearance, the image of me he had constructed in his mind. And the moment that image changed, his love evaporated. If you've ever stayed too long with someone who made you feel worthless, if you've ever made excuses for someone who was slowly destroying you, drop a comment below. Share your story. You are not alone. And keep watching, because what happens next made everything so much worse. Monique Davis showed up on a Wednesday evening in early October. I was 5 months pregnant, exhausted from a day of work and morning sickness that had stretched into afternoon sickness when my phone rang. "Denise, it's Monique, from U of M?" It took me a moment to place her. Monique Davis. We had been friends freshman and sophomore year, before she transferred to pursue a music career. We had lost touch years ago. "I'm in trouble, Denise," she sobbed through the phone. "My boyfriend kicked me out. I've been sleeping in my car. I have nowhere to go." My heart broke for her. Despite the years of distance, I remembered the girl who had stayed up late studying with me, who had held my hair back at parties, who had been a real friend once upon a time. "Come stay with us," I said. "We have a guest room. You can stay until you get back on your feet." When I told Curtis that night, his reaction surprised me. "You invited someone to live with us without asking me first?" "She's an old friend. She's homeless, Curtis. It's just for a few weeks." Curtis frowned, but then something shifted in his expression. "What does she look like?" The question caught me off guard. "What does that matter?" "Just curious? Is she attractive?" A cold feeling settled in my stomach. "I haven't seen her in 10 years. I don't know." "Well, I guess we'll find out tomorrow." He walked away, leaving me with a sick feeling that had nothing to do with the pregnancy. Monique arrived the next day. She was stunning, even more beautiful than I remembered. Honey-colored skin, long braids, a body that her fitted clothes showed off to perfection. She looked like she had stepped off a magazine cover, not out of a car she had been sleeping in. But I barely noticed her appearance, because I was too busy watching my husband. Curtis's reaction to Monique was like watching a starving man see food for the first time. His eyes traveled over her slowly, deliberately, drinking in every curve. His lips parted. His posture changed, straightening, presenting. The dull, disinterested look he had worn around me for months vanished, replaced by an alertness, an energy, a hunger I hadn't seen since I told him I was pregnant. "Monique, this is my husband Curtis," I said, my voice carefully neutral. Monique extended her hand with a dazzling smile. "So nice to meet you." "Thank you so much for letting me stay." Curtis held her hand a beat too long. "Our pleasure. Make yourself at home." Our pleasure. Like they were already a unit, already a team. Monique's eyes flicked to me, to my swollen belly, my tired face, my unwashed hair, and then back to Curtis. And she smiled. It was a small smile. Private. Calculating. In that moment, I could almost see the wheels turning in her head. She had seen my husband's reaction. She had cataloged my pregnant, exhausted appearance. And she had done the math. She saw opportunity, and she was going to take it. My gut screamed at me to make an excuse. To say the guest room wasn't ready. To get this woman out of my house before she destroyed everything. But I ignored my gut. I told myself I was being paranoid, jealous, crazy. I let Monique Davis walk into my home. And that decision nearly cost me everything. The changes started within days. First, it was the way Monique watched Curtis. Not obviously. She was too smart for that. But I noticed. When he walked into a room, her eyes followed him like a cat tracking prey. When he spoke, she hung on every word. When he laughed, she laughed too, even if nothing was funny. And she started positioning herself. Every time I left the room, she would find a reason to be alone with Curtis. Every time I went to bed early, which was often, because the pregnancy exhaustion was crushing, she would stay up late with him, talking, laughing, building intimacy. I could hear them through the walls. The murmur of conversation. The sound of her laugh, bright and tinkling. His laugh in response, warmer than it had been in months. Then it was her appearance. Within a week, Monique's wardrobe transformed. The clothes got tighter, the necklines got lower. She started wearing full makeup around the house, perfume that lingered in every room she passed through. "Hot date?" I asked one morning, watching her apply lipstick in the hallway mirror. "Oh no," she said breezily. "I just feel better when I look put together. Self-care, you know? You should try it sometime. Might help you feel more like yourself." Her eyes flicked down to my stained maternity shirt, my bare face, my unwashed hair. The insult was clear. If you're feeling that anger building right now, if you're screaming at your screen for Denise to wake up, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Tell me what you would do in her situation, because the worst is still coming. 3 weeks into her stay, Curtis started criticizing me openly. "Those pants aren't flattering at all. You used to care about how you looked." Monique made dinner again. At least someone around here knows how to take care of a man. The comparisons were constant. Monique's cooking, Monique's appearance, Monique's energy. One night, I caught Curtis staring at Monique as she walked through the living room in a dress that barely covered anything. "She's beautiful, isn't she?" I said quietly. Curtis didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. "She takes care of herself," he said pointedly. "She hasn't let herself go." I felt something crack inside me. "I'm growing our child, Curtis. What's your excuse for being cruel? He just shook his head and walked away. 6 weeks after Monique arrived, I decided enough was enough. 6 weeks after Monique arrived, I decided enough was enough. I spent 2 hours getting ready one Saturday night. Did my hair, my makeup, put on a beautiful maternity dress that made me feel almost pretty again. When I walked into the living room, Curtis looked up from his phone, and he laughed. "What are you supposed to be?" he asked, his lips curling with amusement. My heart shattered. I wanted to look nice. For us. I thought maybe what? Curtis shook his head. "Denise, look at yourself. No amount of makeup is going to change what you look like right now. You're just embarrassing yourself." Monique chose that moment to appear from the kitchen, wearing simple jeans and a t-shirt, looking effortlessly gorgeous. "Oh, Denise," she said with false sweetness, "you look so dressed up." "Special occasion?" She and Curtis exchanged a look, and they both smiled. That was the moment I knew for certain. Monique had to go. The next morning, I confronted Curtis. "She needs to leave. It's been 6 weeks. She hasn't found a job. She hasn't looked for an apartment. And something is going on between you two." Curtis's face went cold. "What are you accusing me of?" "I'm not accusing. I'm observing. The way you look at her. The way you laugh with her. The way you compare me to her constantly. Maybe if you gave me something to be happy about, I wouldn't need to find it elsewhere." The words hung in the air between us. "So you admit it," I said quietly. "There's something happening." "Nothing has happened." Curtis's voice was hard. "But if you keep pushing, if you keep being jealous and paranoid and difficult, maybe something will. I want her out of my house." Curtis laughed bitterly. "Your house? You mean the house you're paying off in installments to some old lady? The house I've been contributing to for almost 2 years? Curtis, you don't get to make unilateral decisions. You brought her here. You deal with her. But she's not leaving just because you're insecure." He walked out, leaving me shaking with fury and fear. I found Monique in the guest room and told her she needed to find her own place. The transformation was instant. Tears. Trembling. A performance worthy of an Oscar. "I knew this was coming," she sobbed. "I've been such a burden. I'll leave tonight. Maybe I can find a shelter." Curtis appeared in the doorway, his face full of concern. For her. "What's going on?" "Monique. What happened?" "Denise wants me to leave," Monique whispered. "And she's right. I should go." Curtis turned to me with fury in his eyes. "It's almost Christmas, Denise. What is wrong with you?" "What's wrong with me? I'm 7 months pregnant and I want my house back." "One more month," Curtis said coldly. "She can stay one more month. That's final." He put his arm around Monique and led her away, leaving me standing alone, wondering how I had become the villain in my own home. After that, everything accelerated. Curtis stopped sleeping in the guest room. I don't know where he slept. I didn't ask. Monique's clothes got even tighter, shorter, more provocative. She paraded around like she owned the place, and the late nights got later. I would go to bed at 9, and when I woke up at midnight, I could hear them downstairs. Talking, laughing, the intimate sounds of two people growing closer. One night, I stood at the top of the stairs and listened. "She's gotten so fat," Monique was saying. "I don't know how you stand it." "I don't," Curtis replied. "I can barely look at her anymore. The way she looks now, it's nothing like when we met." "Poor thing." Monique's voice dripped with false sympathy. "You deserve better." "Someone like you?" A pause, then a laugh, low and suggestive. "Maybe, if you play your cards right." My stomach churned. I should have confronted them right then. I should have trusted my gut and acted. But I was scared, exhausted, 7 months pregnant with nowhere to go in the middle of the night. So I went back to bed and pretended I hadn't heard. But the truth couldn't be hidden forever. On Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve arrived cold and merciless. The blizzard had been building all day. By evening, the snow was falling so thick you couldn't see across the street. I went to bed early, exhausted and defeated. No holiday spirit, no joy, just survival. Until my craving hit. Lemon candy water, my latest obsession. Ice-cold water with crushed lemon candy dissolved in it. The tangy sweetness I couldn't stop thinking about. I slipped out of bed and headed downstairs. The living room was empty. Strange. Curtis and Monique had been down here when I went to bed. I had heard their voices through my bedroom door. Where were they now? I got my glass of water, dropped the lemon candy in, and listened. The house was too quiet. Then I heard it. A sound from down the hall, from Monique's room. A sound that made my blood turn to ice. The door wasn't fully closed. Through the crack, I saw everything. My husband, the woman I had trusted, together. I must have made a sound, a gasp, a cry, something, because Curtis's head snapped toward the door. For one frozen moment, our eyes met. Then I ran. Curtis caught up with me in the living room. "Denise, wait! Don't touch me!" I spun around, tears streaming down my face. "How could you, in my house, on Christmas Eve?" "Calm down, you're being hysterical." "Hysterical? I just caught you with her. How long has this been going on?" Monique appeared in the hallway, slowly pulling a silk robe over her body. A robe I recognized as mine. She looked completely unbothered. "Does it matter how long?" she asked coolly. "The point is, it's happening. And honestly, Denise, it's your own fault." I stared at her. This woman I had rescued from homelessness, fed, sheltered, trusted. My fault? "I saw the way he looked at me the first day I walked in here," Monique said with a cruel smile. "And I saw the way he looked at you, like you were furniture, like you disgusted him. You were so busy being pregnant and pathetic that you handed him to me on a silver platter. I took you in when you had nothing. I gave you a home. And I took what I wanted." Monique shrugged. "Don't be naive, Denise. Finders keepers. This is how the world works." I turned to Curtis, desperate for some explanation. "Why?" I asked. "Why, Curtis? I'm carrying your child. I'm pregnant." Curtis's jaw tightened. "A pregnancy you didn't even discuss with me first." "We never discussed anything. That's the problem. We dated for 2 months and got married. We never talked about children, about the future, about any of it." "Exactly," Curtis exploded. "We moved too fast. I got swept up in how you looked, how you made me feel. But I never wanted this life, Denise. I never wanted a wife who was sick all the time, who couldn't take care of herself, who trapped me with a baby I didn't ask for." "Trapped you?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You were the one who proposed after 2 months. You were the one who rushed everything. Because you were beautiful, because you were sexy and exciting and everything I thought I wanted." Curtis's face twisted with frustration. "But that woman is gone. She disappeared the moment you got pregnant, and now I'm stuck with someone I don't even recognize." "Someone you don't recognize? I'm still me. Curtis, I'm just pregnant. The body you were so obsessed with is doing exactly what bodies do when they grow human beings." "And Monique?" I continued, my voice rising. "Monique is what you really want?" "Monique doesn't make me feel trapped. Monique doesn't make me feel guilty. Monique actually makes me feel like a man instead of a disappointment." "Then maybe you should have thought about that before you were busy sowing your seeds in me," I shouted. "Nobody forced you into my bed, Curtis. Nobody made you skip protection. You don't get to blame me for the consequences of your own choices." "We never even talked about kids," Curtis yelled back. "Exactly," I screamed. "We never talked about anything. We dated for 2 months like lovesick teenagers and got married without knowing a single important thing about each other. And now here we are. You're sleeping with my friend. You don't want me pregnant, and our whole marriage was built on nothing but physical attraction and stupid assumptions." We stood there, both breathing hard, the ugly truth finally laid bare. Curtis had never loved me. He had loved my body, my appearance, the fantasy of me. And the moment reality intruded, the moment I became a real person with needs and changes and humanity, he checked out. And I had ignored every warning sign, every red flag, every piece of advice my mother had given me. I had rushed into marriage with a stranger and was now paying the price. "Get out," I said, my voice cold. "Both of you, get out of my house." Curtis laughed. "Your house? You mean the house you're still paying off? The house I've been contributing to for almost 2 years? The money you contributed is in a savings account, every penny. I'll give it all back in the divorce. I was just testing you." Something dark flashed in Curtis's eyes. "You want me gone? Fine." He grabbed my arm. Curtis, what are you? But you're going first. Everything happened so fast. He started dragging me toward the front door. I tried to pull away, tried to fight, but he was too strong. My bare feet slipped on the hardwood floors. Curtis, please, it's a blizzard out there. Should have thought about that before you trapped me, before you humiliated me. I didn't trap you. You trapped yourself with your own choices. He yanked open the front door. The cold hit me like a wall, stealing my breath. Curtis, please, this is crazy. Just let me get my coat. My phone, something. But he wasn't listening. His face was twisted with rage and wounded pride. He pushed me out the door. I stumbled down the porch steps, my bare feet hitting the ice. I landed hard on my hands and knees in the snow. When I looked up, Curtis and Monique were standing in the doorway. Curtis, please, I begged. I'll freeze out here. Curtis's face was stone. You wanted to test me? He said coldly. Congratulations, you got your answer. Monique leaned into him, a satisfied smile on her face. Merry Christmas, Denise. Don't worry about the house. I'll take good care of it. And Curtis slammed the door in my face. That brings us back to where we started. Me, on my knees in the snow, watching through the window as my husband and my betrayer settled onto my couch, watching them cuddle. Watching Monique reach for the remote. Watching the blinds descend, sealing me out of my own life. But here's what Curtis and Monique didn't know. They thought they had won. They thought they had broken me. They thought I was helpless, homeless, finished. They were wrong. Because they didn't know the full truth about that house. They didn't know about the deed in my name. They didn't know about the LLC. They didn't know about the accounts I had been protecting, the connections I had. They thought they were kicking me out of their house. They were actually squatting in mine. And they were about to find out exactly what that meant. I don't know how long I stayed on that porch. The cold was everywhere now. In my bones, in my blood, in my soul. My fingers were turning blue. My feet were numb. My nightgown was soaked through with melting snow, but I had to move, had to get help, had to survive. One foot in front of the other, one step at a time. I forced myself to stand. My legs shook violently. The wind cut through me like knives. The Henderson house was 3 doors down. If I could just make it there. The walk felt like miles. Every step was agony. The snow was blinding, disorienting. But I kept moving. One step, another, another. Finally, I reached their porch. I collapsed against their door and knocked. Once, twice, 3 times. The door opened, and Margaret Henderson looked down at me with horror. Oh my Lord, Harold, Harold, come quick! Warm hands pulled me inside. Warm blankets wrapped around me. I tried to speak, but my body had nothing left. The last thing I remember before everything went black was Harold's voice on the phone. We need an ambulance. Pregnant woman. Severe cold exposure. Please hurry. Then the darkness took me. But I didn't stay in the darkness. I woke up, I survived. And what I did next, what I did to Curtis and Monique, will make you stand up and cheer. They had no idea that the reckoning was coming. If you want to see what happens next, if you want to see Denise get justice, drop a comment right now saying justice. Hit that subscribe button right now because trust me, they're going to get exactly what's coming to them. I woke up to the sound of beeping machines and the smell of antiseptic. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. My mind was foggy, floating in a haze of medication and exhaustion. White walls, bright lights, tubes in my arm. Then it all came rushing back. Curtis, Monique, the snow, the cold, the door slamming in my face. My hand flew to my belly. It was still round, still there. But was my baby? She's okay. I turned my head to see my mom sitting beside the bed. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying, but she was smiling through her tears. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. The baby's okay, Denise, she said, squeezing my hand so tight it almost hurt. Doctor says you're both gonna be fine. You got severe hypothermia, and they were worried for a while, but you're stable now. Both of you. The relief hit me so hard I couldn't breathe. I started crying then. Ugly, heaving sobs that shook my whole body and made the monitors beep faster. How long have I been here? I managed to ask between sobs. 3 days, Mom said. Margaret Henderson called me right after she called 911. I got on the first flight I could find. Been sitting here ever since, waiting for you to wake up. She reached out and stroked my hair, the way she used to when I was a little girl having nightmares. What happened, baby? She asked quietly. What did that man do to you? And I told her. I told her everything. Monique moving in. Curtis's disgust with my pregnant body. The affair developing right under my nose. Catching them together on Christmas Eve. The argument. Curtis dragging me to the door and pushing me out into the blizzard. By the time I finished, my mom's face had transformed. I had seen my mother angry before. I had seen her frustrated, disappointed, upset. But I had never seen her like this. Her jaw was set so tight I could see the muscles twitching. Her eyes had gone cold and hard, like black ice on a winter road. That man, she said slowly, each word precise and deliberate, threw you out into a blizzard, 7 months pregnant, in your nightgown, on Christmas Eve. Yes, I whispered. And that woman, that snake you took in off the street, she stood there and watched. She smiled. She blew you a kiss. Yes. Mom was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was calm, controlled, terrifying. Where are they now? Still in my house, I assume. They think they won, Mom. They think they got rid of me. Mom smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a woman who had built an empire from nothing, who had survived poverty and prejudice and every obstacle life had thrown at her. It was the smile of a woman who was about to go to war. They have no idea who they're dealing with, Mom said quietly. That house is in your name, your LLC. They're squatters, Denise, trespassers, and they're about to find out exactly what that means. She pulled out her phone. Who are you calling? I asked. Everyone. The lawyers, the police, and a few friends who owe me favors. She looked at me with fierce determination. Those two wanted to throw you out in the cold? Baby girl, we're about to make their lives a frozen wasteland. The next few days were a blur of legal consultations and strategic planning. Mom had called in reinforcements. Her personal attorney, a shark named Camille Foster who specialized in property law. A private investigator named Yvette Williams who came highly recommended. And a family law attorney named Victoria Hayes who was already drawing up divorce papers. They gathered in my hospital room like generals planning a military campaign. Let me make sure I understand the situation, Camille said, reviewing the documents Mom had brought. The brownstone is owned by Robinson Holdings, LLC. You are the sole member of that LLC. Curtis Thompson's name appears nowhere on the deed, the title, or any ownership documents. Correct, I confirmed. And the payments he's been making? They went into a separate savings account in my name. I have records of every deposit. I was planning to give it all back to him on our second anniversary as a gift. Once I was sure he really loved me. Camille's eyebrows rose. Smart. Your mother raised you well. I tried, Mom said grimly. So, legally speaking, Camille continued, Curtis Thompson has no claim to the property whatsoever. He's been paying what he believed was a mortgage, but in reality, he was simply giving you money. There's no contract, no agreement, no legal obligation on your part. What about the fact that they're married? Victoria asked. Could he claim it as a marital asset? Camille shook her head. The property was acquired 3 years before the marriage. It's held in an LLC that Denise established before she even met Curtis. Under Illinois law, that's separate property, not marital property. He has no claim. So what can we do? I asked. Camille smiled. It was not a friendly smile. We can have them removed. Immediately. They're trespassing on private property. You never gave Curtis permission to remain in the house after you asked him to leave. He refused. Then he physically removed you from the premises. That's not just trespassing, that's assault. And the woman? Mom asked. Monique? She's a guest who was invited by Denise. Denise revoked that invitation when she asked her to leave. Monique also refused. She's also trespassing. Camille made a note. And based on what Denise described, she may also be liable for conspiracy to commit assault, since she encouraged Curtis to throw Denise out and actively participated by locking the door. Yvette, the private investigator, spoke up. I can have surveillance on the house within the hour. Document everything they do, every time they enter or exit, every person they bring over. Everything. Do it, Mom said. What about criminal charges? I asked. What Curtis did, throwing me out in a blizzard, can he be arrested for that? Victoria nodded slowly. What he did could constitute assault, reckless endangerment, and depending on how aggressive the DA wants to be, attempted murder. You were 7 months pregnant, Denise. The temperature was below 0. He knew you could die out there, and he did it anyway. Attempted murder. The words hung in the air. I want to press charges, I said quietly. I want him to face consequences for what he did. Then we'll make it happen, Victoria said. But first, let's get them out of your house. Let's take away their comfortable little love nest and see how much they enjoy each other when they're homeless. Mom squeezed my hand. This is just the beginning, baby. By the time we're done, Curtis Thompson and Monique Davis are going to wish they'd never been born. 4 days after Christmas, Curtis Thompson got a knock on his door. I wasn't there to see it. I was still in the hospital recovering. But Yvette was across the street with a camera, documenting everything. She showed me the video later. Curtis opened the door in his bathrobe, clearly expecting a delivery or a neighbor. What he got instead was a sheriff's deputy holding an eviction notice and 2 police officers standing behind him. Curtis Thompson? The deputy asked. Yeah, that's me. What's this about? Sir, I'm here to inform you that you are trespassing on private property. This residence belongs to Robinson Holdings, LLC. You are not the owner, and you have no legal right to be here. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises, or you will be arrested. Curtis's face went through about 15 different emotions in 10 seconds. Confusion, disbelief, anger, fear. That's impossible, he sputtered. I live here. I've been paying the mortgage for almost 2 years. There is no mortgage on this property, sir. It's owned free and clear by Robinson Holdings, LLC. Your name appears nowhere on any ownership documents. But my wife... Your wife is the sole member of Robinson Holdings, LLC. She has requested your removal from her property. You have 24 hours. The deputy handed Curtis the paperwork and walked away. Curtis stood in the doorway, frozen, staring at the documents in his hand. Then Monique appeared behind him. What's going on, baby? Who was that? Curtis didn't answer. He just kept staring at the papers. Curtis? Baby? What's wrong? Finally, Curtis spoke. His voice was hollow. She owns the house. Denise. She's always owned it. The whole thing was a lie. What do you mean? There's no mortgage. There's no Mrs. Patterson. She bought this house years before she met me. I've been paying her money for nothing. Monique grabbed the papers from his hand and read them quickly. Her face went pale. We have to leave? In 24 hours? That's what it says. But where will we go? I don't have any money. I've been living off you for 2 months. Curtis laughed bitterly. And I've been living off her. The whole time. I thought I was building equity in our home. I thought we were partners. But she had really been testing me. Testing you? To see if I really loved her. To see if I would stick around when things got hard. Curtis crumpled the papers in his fist. And I failed. I failed spectacularly. For a moment, just a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Then I remembered the sound of the door slamming in my face, the cold seeping into my bones, the terror of thinking I might die on my own front porch, and the pity evaporated. Curtis didn't leave in 24 hours. He tried to fight it. He hired a lawyer, a cheap one, clearly, because the motion he filed was laughably weak. He claimed the property was a marital asset since he'd been paying the mortgage during the marriage. He claimed I had deceived him about the ownership. He claimed he had a right to remain in the home pending divorce proceedings. His arguments fell apart within minutes. Camille Foster demolished them one by one. Your Honor, she said, standing before the judge with a thick folder of documents, Mr. Thompson's claim that this property is a marital asset is simply false. The property was purchased by Robinson Holdings, LLC on March 15, 2017, 3 full years before Mr. Thompson and my client were married. My client is the sole member of that LLC. She established it before she ever met Mr. Thompson. She handed the judge a copy of the original deed. Furthermore, Camille continued, there is no mortgage on this property. It was purchased outright. The payments Mr. Thompson claims to have made went into a savings account controlled by my client. money she intended to return to him as a gift on their second anniversary. Here are the bank statements showing every deposit. Another stack of documents. Mr. Thompson has no legal ownership of this property. He is not on the deed. He is not on any ownership documents. He was a guest in my client's home, a guest who violently removed my client from the premises and left her in life-threatening conditions. Curtis's lawyer tried to object, but the judge silenced him with a look. I've reviewed the evidence, the judge said. The property clearly belongs to Ms. Robinson. Mr. Thompson has no legal claim. However, I do want to address the payments he made during the marriage. My heart sank. Was he going to rule in Curtis's favor somehow? Ms. Robinson, the judge continued, looking at me. Mr. Thompson contributed approximately $47,000 during the marriage under the belief that he was paying a mortgage. While you were under no legal obligation to accept those payments, and while Mr. Thompson's behavior has been reprehensible, I would recommend that these funds be addressed in the divorce settlement. Your Honor, I spoke up. I always intended to return that money to my husband. Every penny is still in the account. I was going to give it back to him on our second anniversary as a demonstration of trust and partnership. Obviously, that's not happening now, but I have no desire to keep money that was given under false pretenses. Mr. Thompson can have it all back. The judge looked surprised. You're willing to return the full amount? Yes. I don't want anything from him. I just want him out of my house and out of my life. Curtis's face was unreadable. The judge nodded slowly. Very well. Mr. Thompson, you have 48 hours to vacate the property. The funds will be addressed in the divorce proceedings. And Mr. Thompson, consider yourself lucky. What you did to your pregnant wife could have resulted in criminal charges far more serious than trespassing. Curtis said nothing. But Monique couldn't keep her mouth shut. This is ridiculous, she muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. She tricked him. She lied about owning the house. She's the one who should be punished. The judge's eyes narrowed. And who are you? Monique straightened. I'm Curtis's friend. Friend. The judge's voice was flat. The friend who moved into Ms. Robinson's home, had an affair with her husband, and then encouraged him to throw his pregnant wife into a blizzard? Monique's face went red. I've seen the police report, Ms. Davis. I know exactly what happened on Christmas Eve, and I would suggest you remain silent before you make your situation any worse. Monique's mouth snapped shut. The judge looked at both of them with undisguised contempt. 48 hours, don't make me send the sheriff again. But getting them out of the house was only the beginning, because Curtis Thompson wasn't just going to lose his home. He was going to lose everything. The divorce proceedings began in February. Victoria Hayes was merciless. Given the circumstances, she said during our strategy meeting, we're pursuing maximum damages, adultery, cruel and inhuman treatment, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and we're going to make sure the court knows exactly what kind of man Curtis Thompson is. What can we realistically get? I asked. Everything he has, Victoria replied. His savings, his retirement accounts, his car, and given that he assaulted you while you were pregnant, we may be able to get punitive damages as well. What about his contributions to the house? You've already agreed to return those. That actually helps us. It shows you're being reasonable while he's been anything but. The divorce was brutal. Curtis tried to fight. He claimed I had deceived him about my finances. He claimed I had entrapped him into marriage. He claimed the pregnancy was a scheme to trap him. Victoria destroyed every argument. Your Honor, she said during one memorable hearing, Mr. Thompson claims he was deceived about the house, but my client never told him she owned it outright. She told him she was paying it off slowly, which was technically true since she was putting his contributions into savings. He assumed there was a mortgage. He never asked for documentation. He never asked to see the deed. He simply assumed, and we all know what happens when we assume. A few chuckles from the gallery. Furthermore, Victoria continued, Mr. Thompson claims my client entrapped him with pregnancy, but my client didn't get pregnant alone. Mr. Thompson was a willing participant in the activities that led to conception. If he didn't want children, he should have had that conversation before marriage. He should have taken precautions. He doesn't get to blame my client for the consequences of his own choices. Curtis's lawyer tried to object. And finally, Victoria said, raising her voice over the objection, Mr. Buddy, Thompson claims my client deceived him about her finances. But my client was following her mother's advice to protect herself from exactly the kind of man Mr. Thompson turned out to be. A man who was more interested in her body than her mind. A man who couldn't handle the physical changes of pregnancy. A man who threw his pregnant wife into a blizzard and locked the door behind her. She turned to face Curtis directly. My client's deception may have saved her life, because if Curtis Thompson had known about her family's wealth from the beginning, I shuddered to think what he might have done to get his hands on it. The courtroom was silent. Curtis couldn't meet anyone's eyes. Now I need to tell you about Monique, because while Curtis was losing the divorce battle, Monique was facing her own reckoning. Remember how Camille mentioned that Monique could be liable for conspiracy to commit assault? She was, and it got worse. Yvette's surveillance revealed that before Curtis and Monique were evicted, they had done serious damage to my house. Holes punched in walls, furniture destroyed, my grandmother's china shattered on the kitchen floor, obscene words spray-painted on the bedroom walls. And this is the part that really got them. They had stolen things, my jewelry, my electronics, some designer items that had been gifts from my mother. When the police executed a search warrant on the motel room where Curtis and Monique were staying, they found everything. Monique was arrested for theft, vandalism, and conspiracy to commit assault. Curtis was arrested for assault, reckless endangerment, theft, and vandalism. They were both photographed in handcuffs, looking shocked and terrified, and I was there to watch. I had just been released from the hospital when the arrests happened. My daughter, Joy, I had named her Joy, was 2 weeks old. She had come early, probably stressed by everything her mother had been through, but she was healthy. Perfect. The most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Mom was holding Joy when we got the call that Curtis and Monique were being taken into custody. "You should go," Mom said. "You should be there. You should look them in the eyes and let them see what they failed to destroy." So I went. The police station was cold and institutional, but I barely noticed. I walked in just as they were bringing Curtis out in handcuffs to transfer him to booking. He saw me and stopped dead. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. He looked terrible, unshaven, hollow-eyed. The confident, charming man I had married was gone, replaced by someone broken and desperate. "Denise," he said hoarsely, "please, can we talk? Just for a minute?" The officers looked at me questioningly. I nodded. They stepped back, giving us a semblance of privacy while staying close enough to intervene if needed. "What do you want to say, Curtis?" He swallowed hard. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything. I know I can never make up for what I did. But I need you to understand." "Understand what?" "I never meant for it to go that far. I was angry. I was humiliated. You told me that our whole marriage was some kind of test, and I lost it. I wasn't thinking." "You weren't thinking when you dragged me to the door. You weren't thinking when you pushed me into the snow? You weren't thinking when you locked the door and left me to freeze?" Curtis flinched at each question. "I thought you would go to a neighbor's house. I thought you would be fine. I never imagined—" "You never imagined I might die?" "Curtis, it was below zero. I was in my nightgown. I was 7 months pregnant. What did you think was going to happen?" He had no answer. "Why?" I asked quietly. "That's what I really want to know. Why did you do any of it? The affair, the cruelty. Why?" Curtis was quiet for a long moment. "Because I was scared," he finally said. "Because I wasn't ready to be a father. Because you got pregnant and suddenly everything changed and I didn't know how to handle it. So you handled it by sleeping with my friend? By telling me I was disgusting? By throwing me out into a blizzard? So you handled it by sleeping with my friend? By telling me I was disgusting? By throwing me out into a blizzard? The pregnancy wasn't planned. We never talked about kids. You just announced you were pregnant and expected me to be happy about it. So talk to me about it," I exploded. "Tell me you were scared. Tell me you weren't ready. We could have worked through it together. Instead, you shut me out. You made me feel worthless. You found comfort in another woman instead of your wife." I know. Curtis's voice broke. "I made every wrong choice. I was a coward. I was weak. And Monique. She was there. She was easy. She didn't ask anything of me. She saw an opportunity and she took it. She told me that herself. I know that now. She just wanted what she thought I could give her. And now that I have nothing, now that you have nothing, she's useless to you. Just like I became useless when I stopped looking the way you wanted. Curtis couldn't meet my eyes. We moved too fast, I continued. We dated for 2 months and got married without knowing anything real about each other. We never talked about children. We never talked about what we really wanted out of life. We built a marriage on physical attraction and nothing else. I know. My mother warned me. She said you were only interested in my body. She said I should slow down, get to know you, have the hard conversations. But I didn't listen. I was too caught up in the fairy tale. I'm sorry I wasn't the man you deserved. No, Curtis. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry there are consequences. If you hadn't been arrested, if you hadn't lost everything, would you be standing here apologizing? Or would you be in a hotel room with Monique laughing about how you got away with it? He didn't answer, because we both knew the truth. I hope you learned something from this, I said finally. I hope you become a better person. Not for me. It's too late for us. But for yourself. And for any woman unfortunate enough to cross your path in the future. I turned to walk away. Denise, wait. I paused but didn't turn around. The baby, Curtis said quietly. Is she okay? Something twisted in my chest. Even now, even after everything, there was a part of him that cared. Or at least wanted to care. She's perfect, I said. Her name is Joy, and she will never know you. She will never know what you did to her mother. She will grow up loved and protected and happy, and you will have no part in it. Denise, please. Goodbye, Curtis. I walked away without looking back. Then it was Monique's turn. They brought her out a few minutes later, also in handcuffs. Unlike Curtis, she didn't look broken. She looked furious. Her eyes were hard, her jaw set, her whole body radiating anger. When she saw me, her expression flickered. Just for a moment, something like fear crossed her face. Then the mask came back. Come to gloat? She asked coldly. No, I said. I came to ask you something. What? Why? Monique laughed bitterly. Why, what? Why did I sleep with your husband? Why did I take what I wanted? Why did I watch you get thrown out into the snow and do nothing? All of it. We were friends once, Monique. We lived together in college. We studied together. We supported each other. What happened to that person? Monique's expression hardened. That person was poor, she said flatly. That person struggled. That person watched everyone else get the things she wanted while she scraped by on nothing. And then I met your husband, and I saw an opportunity. An opportunity. You had everything, Denise. The house, the successful business, the handsome husband, and you weren't even grateful for it. You were so busy being pregnant and miserable that you didn't even notice what you had. So you decided to take it? I decided I deserved it more than you did. Monique shrugged. Curtis wasn't happy. He told me so himself. He said you had changed, that you weren't the woman he married, that he felt trapped. All I did was offer him an alternative. You saw a vulnerable man in a struggling marriage and you exploited it. I saw what I wanted and I went after it. That's not exploitation. That's ambition. I stared at this woman, this stranger wearing my former friend's face. You know what the saddest part is? I said quietly. Curtis never loved you either. He loved how you made him feel. He loved the escape you represented. But love? Real love? He doesn't know what that is, and neither do you. Love is for suckers, Monique said quickly, but Denise definitely saw the hurt she tried to mask at hearing that Curtis never loved her. Money and power are what matter. And how's that working out for you right now? For the first time, Monique's composure cracked. She looked down at her handcuffs. At the police officers waiting to take her away, at the ruins of the life she had tried to steal. This isn't over, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Yes, it is, I replied. I have my house back. I have my daughter. I have my life, and you have nothing. You threw away a real friendship for a man who was never going to love you, and now you're going to jail. I'd say I hope you learned something from this, but honestly, I don't care what you do. You're not worth any more of my energy. I turned to walk away. Denise, I paused. For what it's worth, Monique said, her voice smaller now. I never meant for you to get hurt, not like that. When Curtis pushed you out, I thought you'd just go to a neighbor. You didn't think at all. That's the problem. Neither of you thought about anything except what you wanted in the moment. And now you're facing the consequences. I looked at her one last time. Goodbye, Monique. And I walked out of the police station, into the cold February air, and I didn't look back. The trials happened 3 months later. Curtis pleaded guilty to assault, reckless endangerment, and vandalism. His lawyer had advised him that fighting the charges would only make things worse, especially with the video evidence from the Henderson's security camera. Yes, there was video. Margaret and Harold Henderson had a security camera that covered part of the street, including my front porch. It had captured everything. Curtis dragging me to the door opening, me stumbling out, the door slamming, me collapsing in the snow. When the prosecutor played that video in court, several members of the jury were crying. Curtis was sentenced to 2 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 18 months. Monique went to trial. She fought the charges, claiming she had nothing to do with what Curtis did, that she was just a bystander, that she couldn't be held responsible for his actions. The jury didn't buy it. Yvette had done excellent work. She had found social media posts Monique had made mocking me. She had found evidence that Monique had suggested throwing me out, had encouraged Curtis, had locked the door behind me. Monique was convicted of conspiracy to commit assault, theft, and vandalism. She was sentenced to 2 years in prison. When the verdicts came down, I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not joy, not relief, just emptiness. Justice had been served. My tormentors were going to prison. I had won. But it didn't feel like winning. It felt like the end of a nightmare that had cost me almost everything. If you're feeling that weight right now, that mix of satisfaction and sadness, drop a comment below. Tell me how you're feeling. Because Denise's story isn't over yet. She survived. She got justice. But now comes the hardest part. Learning how to live again. The months after the trials were the hardest of my life. Not because of Curtis or Monique. They were locked away, facing the consequences of their choices. But because I had to rebuild everything. My sense of safety. My ability to trust. My belief that people were fundamentally good. All of it had been shattered, and putting the pieces back together was agonizing work. I sold the brownstone. I know that might seem strange. I had fought so hard to prove it was mine, to kick Curtis and Monique out, to reclaim what they had tried to steal. But I couldn't live there anymore. Every room held memories. The living room where Curtis and Monique had laughed at me. The hallway where I had caught them together. The front door where my husband had thrown me out to die. I needed a fresh start. I used the money from the sale, plus my existing investments, to buy a new place. A beautiful Victorian in Evanston, far from Oak Park, far from the memories, far from everything that had hurt me. Mom helped me move in. She stayed for 3 months, helping with joy, helping me heal, helping me find my footing again. You're going to be okay, she told me one night as we sat on the porch watching the sunset. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you're stronger than you know, Denise. You survived something that would have broken most people, and you're still standing. I don't feel strong, I admitted. I feel hollow. That's normal. Trauma does that. It empties you out. She took my hand. But you'll fill back up. Slowly, day by day. And one day, you'll wake up and realize the hollowness is gone. That you're whole again. Different than before. You can't go through something like this and stay the same, but whole. What if I can't trust anyone again? You will. Not right away. Not easily. But you will. She squeezed my hand. The key is to take your time. Don't rush into anything. Get to know people slowly. Have the hard conversations early. Watch how they treat you when things are difficult. Not just when things are good. Like you always told me to do. Like I always told you. And this time, you'll listen. She smiled gently. Not because I'm forcing you, but because you've learned. That's the silver lining of pain, baby. It teaches you things that nothing else can. Joy grew. She went from a tiny, fragile newborn to a curious, energetic baby to a toddler who was into everything. She was the light of my life, the reason I got up every morning, the proof that something beautiful could come from something terrible. She had Curtis's eyes. That was undeniable. But everything else about her was her own. Her laugh, her curiosity, her fierce determination. And she was surrounded by love. My mom visited every month. My friends rallied around me. The community I built in Evanston embraced us. Joy would never lack for role models, for support, for family. She would grow up knowing she was wanted, loved. Enough. That was the gift I could give her. The gift Curtis had never given me. I didn't date for 2 years. Not because I was scared, though I was, but because I wasn't ready. I needed to heal first, to learn who I was outside of a relationship, to build a life that was complete on its own. And I did. I grew my business. I made new friends. I went to therapy every week, unpacking the trauma, learning to trust myself again. By the time Joy was 3, I was finally starting to feel whole again. That's when I met someone. His name was Daniel. He was a pediatrician at the hospital where Joy went for checkups. Kind, patient, funny, nothing like Curtis. We didn't rush into anything. We dated for 6 months before I even introduced him to Joy. We dated for a year before we said, "I love you." We talked about everything: children, finances, expectations, fears, dreams. All the conversations I should have had with Curtis. All the conversations that could have saved me so much pain. Daniel was patient with my walls, understanding of my scars. He never pushed, never pressured, never made me feel like I was broken for being cautious. And slowly, carefully, I let him in. Curtis got out of prison when Joy was almost 3. I heard about it through my lawyer. He had served 18 months of his 2-year sentence, released early for good behavior. Part of me was terrified. What if he came looking for us? What if he wanted to be part of Joy's life? What if he tried to hurt us again? But Curtis never came. According to the reports my lawyer obtained, he had moved to another state. He was working a low-level job, living in a small apartment, keeping his head down. The charming, confident man who had swept me off my feet was gone. Prison had broken something in him. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I would look at Joy, my beautiful, perfect daughter, and remember what he had almost cost me, what he had tried to destroy, and the pity would evaporate. He had made his choices. He was living with the consequences. That was justice, even if it didn't feel like enough. Monique got out a year after Curtis. She had done something in prison that had earned her an extra year. She also disappeared. Last I heard, she had moved to Florida, trying to reinvent herself, trying to escape the reputation she had earned. I hoped she had learned something. I doubted it. Some people never change. Some people just find new victims. But that wasn't my problem anymore. Joy was 16 when she asked to know the full story. We were at dinner, our favorite Thai restaurant, a tradition we had maintained for years, when she looked up from her pad with serious eyes. "Mom, I want to know about my biological father." I set down my chopsticks. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. You've told me pieces over the years, but never the whole story. I'm old enough now. I want to understand." So I told her. Everything. The whirlwind romance. The warnings I ignored. The pregnancy that changed everything. Monique's arrival. The affair. Christmas Eve. The trial. The aftermath. Joy listened without interrupting. Her face was unreadable. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. "He threw you out into a blizzard," she finally said. "While you were pregnant?" "Yes. And that woman, Monique, she watched, she smiled, she locked the door." "Yes. And if Mrs. Henderson hadn't found you?" "I don't know what would have happened," I admitted. "We might not have survived." Joy's jaw tightened. "Does he know about me? Does he know I exist?" "He knows you were born. My lawyer informed him during the divorce proceedings. But he's never tried to contact us, never asked about you. He signed away his parental rights as part of the divorce settlement. So he doesn't want me." It wasn't a question. And I heard the pain underneath it, no matter how matter-of-fact her voice tried to be. "He doesn't deserve you," I said firmly. "There's a difference. He made his choices, And those choices showed who he really is. A man who only loved me for my appearance. A man who couldn't handle the reality of pregnancy and parenthood. A man who chose another woman over his wife and child. That's not your fault. No, it's not. But for a long time, I blamed myself. I thought if I had been prettier, thinner, better, he wouldn't have strayed. It took years of therapy to understand that his choices were about him, not me. Joy reached across the table and took my hand. I'm sorry you went through that, Mom. I'm not. I squeezed her hand. I mean, I'm sorry for the pain, for the trauma, for the years it took to heal. But I'm not sorry it happened, because it led me to you. And you are the best thing that ever happened to me. Joy's eyes glistened with tears. I love you, Mom. I love you too, baby girl. More than anything in this world. Joy never asked to meet Curtis. I had told her it would be her choice, that if she ever wanted to find him, to know him, I would support her. But she never asked. He's not my father. He's just the man who contributed DNA. Daniel is my father. He's the one who showed up. He's the one who loved us. Daniel and I had gotten married when Joy was 7. A small ceremony, just family and close friends. He had adopted Joy officially when she was 10, and he had been exactly the father she deserved. Present, patient, supportive. Everything Curtis never could have been. This story could end here, with justice served, with wounds healed, with a beautiful life rebuilt from the ashes. But I want to tell you one more thing, because this isn't just a story about revenge. It's a story about lessons learned, lessons I want to share with anyone who might be walking the same path I walked. I'm 53 years old now. Joy is 26. She's a doctor, like her adoptive father. She's engaged to a wonderful man who treats her like gold. She's happy. Daniel and I just celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary. He still makes me laugh every day. He still looks at me like I'm the most beautiful woman in the world, even with my gray hair and wrinkles and all the changes time has brought. That's what real love looks like. Not obsession with appearance. Not passion that fades when bodies change. But genuine love for who someone is, not just what they look like. I got lucky. Despite everything, despite Curtis, despite Monique, despite the coldest night of my life, I got lucky. But luck wasn't the only factor. I did the work. I healed the wounds. I learned the lessons. I made better choices the second time around. And that's what I want for you. If you're in a relationship that doesn't feel right, get out. Take your time finding the next one. If you're rushing into commitment, slow down. Have the hard conversations. If your gut is screaming that something is wrong, listen. Don't ignore your instincts. If you're being made to feel worthless, know that you're not. Know your worth. And find someone who sees it too. You deserve love. Real love. The kind that weathers storms and survives seasons and grows stronger with time. Don't settle for anything less. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you, if it made you think, if it made you feel, if it taught you something, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe, like, and share this story. Let it help someone else the way I hope it's helped you.